Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really powerful story about leadership, about conviction. It all comes straight from the journals and letters of a man who led his people into the total unknown, trading a life of comfort for a principle he just couldn't compromise on.
So let's set the scene. I want you to picture this. It's 1923. It's cold, it's before dawn, and you're in the middle of the Mexican desert. This is where a community of Mennonites who've left absolutely everything behind in Canada are trying to build a new life in this incredibly harsh, unfamiliar land.
In this one line from the journal of their leader, Bishop Isaak M. Dyck, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? This single, haunting sentence captures the huge scale of what they gave up. They didn't just leave property, they left their history, their ancestors, and the quiet, stable life they had always known.
And that really gets us to the heart of what we're talking about today. It's the central question of this whole explainer. What could possibly be worth giving up everything? What idea is so important that a whole community would willingly trade green fields for a world of dust? Okay, so to get this, we've got to first understand the man at the center of it all. Bishop Dyck wasn't just some leader giving orders, he was the shepherd for this flock in a brand new, desolate wilderness.
You know, his day started way before anyone else was even thinking about getting up. He'd rise in that quiet, cold hour before dawn. And this wasn't just a habit. This was his time for prayer, his one moment of solitude before the endless needs of his community. All the questions, the fears, the tough decisions showed up at his door with the sun.
But here's the thing. That image of a strong, stoic leader, it doesn't really tell the whole story. Because behind that calm exterior was a man wrestling with some serious doubt. A struggle he only ever shared with the pages of his private journal.
This is the question that just haunted him, night after night. He wrote about it in his worn-out leather notebook, admitting that the same questions his people were asking him, well, he was asking himself the exact same thing. Was this whole move a massive, terrible mistake?
And when you lay it out like this, the reality of their trade-off is just brutal. They left behind these real, tangible symbols of a good life. Solid barns, the graves of their family, and peace. And what did they get in return? Wind, illness, dust. I mean, on paper, it looks like a horrible deal.
So you might be wondering, how in the world did he lead people while carrying this crushing doubt inside? Well, Bishop Dyck's strength was basically the glue holding everyone together, but it wasn't something you'd find in a big, powerful speech. It was found in something much, much quieter.
See, his authority didn't come from a pulpit, shouting down from on high. It came from walking among his people, from just being there in the most critical moments of their lives. He led not with a bunch of words, but with this steady, empathetic action.
And just look at how this actually worked. He didn't give out empty advice or issue commands. When a farmer lost everything to the drought, he just sat with him in silence. When a kid was acting out at school, he didn't punish him. He asked him what he was afraid of. When two families were fighting, he didn't take sides. He reminded them of a time they won together, of their shared survival.
So it all comes back to this one crucial point. He constantly hammered home the core truth of their existence out there. Their survival as individuals completely depended on their unity as a group. This wasn't just a nice idea, it was the fundamental law of the desert.
Which brings us to the why. Why put up with the dust, the sickness, the doubt? The answer is in the price of conscience, in the core beliefs that made all this suffering not just something to get through, but something that was actually necessary.
In his letters, you can just feel the deep trauma of losing their freedom back in Canada. It was that feeling of being forced, especially when it came to how they educated their kids, that just broke them. That phrase, "you must," coming from a government official, to them, that was a violation of their core beliefs. Here, in the desert, the only command they had to answer was God's.
And you can basically boil down their entire sacrifice to these three, non-negotiables. Freedom from being forced into nationalism, the freedom to teach their own children in their own faith and language, and the freedom to live out their pacifist beliefs, to never, ever be forced to send their sons to war. This was everything to them.
Okay, so this is where it all comes together. This whole journey culminates in one single powerful moment. A moment where the entire meaning of their struggle is suddenly reflected back at the bishop, not from a sermon, not in some divine revelation, but through the eyes of a child.
So get this. A young boy comes up to the bishop and shows him a prayer he'd written, and it's just stunning. He isn't asking God to make things easier, he's thanking God for the hardship.
He thanks God for his dusty house and dirty water because, as he says, this hard life, it feels more honest than the comfortable one they left behind.
And right there, in that one moment, the bishop's quiet response shows that he's found his answer. The boy's prayer solved the question that had been haunting him. Their choice wasn't just about being theologically right. It was about living a life that was authentic, that was real, where what they did and what they believed were perfectly aligned.
So this really is the ultimate takeaway from his journal, the final math on their great exchange. They left comfort behind, no question about that, but what they found to them was infinitely more valuable, moral and spiritual clarity.
And he wraps up the year with this one thought in his journal that just perfectly captures everything. He sees their struggle not as a hardship they just have to get through, but as a noble journey. A long, hard road with truth was so much better than a comfortable life built on a foundation of compromise.
And so, that leaves us with a question to think about. Bishop Dyck and his community, they found their answer in the desert dust. So what about us? In our own lives, what principles are so important that we would trade comfort for the clarity that comes from living by them? What clarity is worth the journey?